every spring, countless gardeners waste entire growing seasons. Not from poor planting technique, but because no one bothered explaining which plants regenerate themselves without any replanting whatsoever. There are 13 plants that will self-seed, multiply, and populate your garden completely on their own, season after season, for as long as you're alive. Get them established this May during this critical planting window, and you'll never purchase replacements again. I'm covering all of them today. And the final one on this list is the plant I'd safeguard above everything else in my entire garden. Stick around for it. The only reliable way to receive this kind of practical information every single week without manually searching for it is to subscribe immediately. Each week, actionable garden knowledge that protects your budget, eliminates expensive errors, and positions you ahead of every critical planting deadline. Delivered directly to you. One click. Subscribe. Number 13. Rose Campion. Rose Campion halts people in their tracks. Brilliant magenta blooms contrasted against silvery gray, almost fuzzy leaves. Nothing delicate about this plant whatsoever. And that's precisely its strength. It's technically a short-lived perennial, lasting maybe 2 to 3 years maximum, but it self-seeds so relentlessly that you'll never lose it from your garden. The real question once it's settled becomes where you'll allow it to spread next, not whether it'll come back. It thrives consistently in USDA zones 4 through 8. Zone 9 gardeners can still succeed with it, but approach it as a cool season plant and shift your sowing to early fall instead of spring. Broadcast seeds directly onto the surface of prepared bare soil this May. Don't bury them. Rose Campion requires light exposure to germinate properly. Once your seedlings hit 3 to 4 inches tall, thin them out to 12 to 18 inches apart and let them establish themselves. Now, every gardening instinct tells you to enrich the soil before planting. With Rose Campion, that's completely backward. Poor, dry, gravelly ground is exactly where this plant delivers its strongest performance. Rich, heavily amended soil creates floppy stems and significantly fewer flowers than you're expecting. Those forgotten corners of your property, the areas where the soil is shallow and parched and nothing else seems to work, that's Rose Campion territory. What most American gardeners never discover about this plant is that the woolly silver foliage is naturally unpalatable to deer and rabbits. Not just somewhat resistant, genuinely unappetizing. If wildlife damage in your area is relentless, and throughout much of the rural South, Midwest, and Mid-Atlantic it absolutely is, this plant deserves a top spot on your list. Color, texture, and zero upkeep in precisely the spots where everything else gets devoured before establishing. Number 12. Evening Primrose. Evening Primrose accomplishes something no other common garden plant can. Sit outside during dusk in midsummer, and you'll actually watch its flowers unfold in real time. Each bloom takes roughly 30 seconds to open completely. That's not merely a gardening detail. That's one of the quieter, more remarkable experiences a garden can offer you. And most people never witness it because nobody mentioned it was worth observing. Technically classified as a biennial, but it self-seeds so dependably across American gardens that practically speaking it functions exactly like a true perennial. Establish it one time and it stays put. It performs across USDA zones 4 through 9. It colonizes roadsides and disturbed areas for good reason. This plant is engineered to survive conditions that would destroy most ornamentals. Poor soil, drought conditions, full sun, partial shade. It handles everything without struggling. Direct, so exclusively in May. Evening Primrose transplants extremely poorly. Sowing straight into the ground is your only dependable option. Scatter seeds on the soil surface. Thin seedlings to roughly 6 inches apart once they're established and give them space. At full maturity, this plant reaches 4 to 6 feet tall. Back of the border or naturalized in a wilder garden section. That's its proper placement. The one thing that genuinely sets it back is excessive watering during early establishment. Sow it and leave it completely alone. The seed heads of Evening Primrose are actively consumed by goldfinches and small songbirds all through late fall and deep into winter. Leave them standing. Don't cut them back in October. Your garden becomes an automatic feeding station without you doing anything additional. wildlife value, continuous self-seeding, and zero maintenance. That's 3 genuine benefits from one plant. Number 11, love in a mist. The name makes perfect sense the instant you see it. Delicate blooms floating within a cloud of feathery, thread-like leaves. There's genuinely nothing else in the American garden quite like it. Technically an annual, but it self-seeds so abundantly that sowing it once in May ends your involvement permanently. It's among the most universally adaptable plants on this entire list, performing dependably across USDA zones 2 through 11. It prefers cooler growing temperatures, which makes May sowing the perfect window throughout most of the country before significant summer heat settles in. Direct sow only. It won't tolerate transplanting. Scatter seeds on raked bare soil in full sun and press them in lightly. They need soil contact to germinate, but shouldn't be buried deeper than 1/8 of an inch. Flowers appear approximately 8 to 10 weeks from sowing. You'll have blooms by early July. Many experienced gardeners cultivate love in a mist primarily for the seed pods, not the flowers themselves, striped, papery, balloon-like pods that dry right on the plant and are extraordinary in dried flower arrangements. Harvest 1/3 of the pods before they drop and allow the remaining 2/3 to self-seed naturally. You get both the visual display and the perpetual replanting simultaneously. For gardeners throughout the northern states, where the growing season is compressed and every planting choice matters, that kind of self-sufficiency makes it worth establishing this May without hesitation. Now, before we continue, drop your USDA growing zone in the comments right now. Zone 3, Zone 6, Zone 9, wherever you're gardening in this country, leave it below. Every person watching benefits from understanding what's actually performing across different regions of America. 3 plants covered, and not one of them will cost you a second dollar after this May. 10 more to go. And the next one is the most underutilized plant in the American vegetable garden. What it does for your tomatoes and squash is going to surprise you. Number 10, borage. Borage produces some of the truest, rarest blue flowers in the entire botanical world. Star-shaped, vibrant, and completely edible. The leaves smell distinctly of cucumber when crushed. It's unusual, it's functional, and once you establish it in your garden, it seeds itself everywhere and returns every single season without any assistance from you. Technically an annual, but plant it this May and you'll never need to plant it again. It reseeds prolifically and comes back stronger each year. Borage grows across USDA zones 2 through 11. Full sun, average to poor soil, sharp drainage. Nearly universal across every American growing region. If you have ground and sunlight, this plant will perform for you. Direct, sow exclusively. Press seeds approximately 1/2 an inch into the soil. Space plants roughly 12 inches apart after thinning. Like several plants already mentioned on this list, borage strongly resists transplanting. Get it in the ground from seed and leave it completely alone. Now here's the part most American gardeners never learn. The worse the soil quality, the better the flavor. When you're growing borage for culinary use, lean, dry soil concentrates the plant's natural oils. Rich, amended beds produce larger plants with noticeably weaker taste. If you're growing it to eat, and you absolutely should be, skip the compost entirely. 2 things about borage that almost no garden content in this country addresses properly. First, grow it near tomatoes and squash. Long-term grower observation and companion planting research both consistently demonstrate it repels tomato hornworm and attracts predatory insects that keep aphid populations under control. Put it in or directly beside your vegetable beds. It earns its space twice over. Second, bees are completely devoted to this plant. A single borage plant in full bloom can have a dozen bees working it simultaneously. For any American gardener attempting to support pollinator populations, that level of activity on one plant matters enormously. Number 9, California poppy. The California poppy is one of those plants that makes people pull over their cars. Entire hillsides in deep orange. That image is seared into the memory of anyone who's witnessed it. And the reason those hillsides look that way is straightforward. This plant self-seeds aggressively, spreads with almost no help, and asks virtually nothing from the soil in return. Technically an annual, but one of the most reliably perpetual self-seeders on this entire list. Sow it in May, where you want permanent color, and your work there is completely finished. Best suited to USDA Zone 6 through 10 for dependable outdoor sowing. Zone 3, 4, and 5 gardeners. Sow in May after your last frost date has passed, and you'll get strong results. In warmer climates throughout the Southwest and Southeast, early May is significantly better than late May. This plant prefers cool soil during germination, so don't delay. Scatter seeds directly on the surface of bare soil. Don't cover them. Don't water heavily after sowing. California poppy evolved in drought conditions, and excessive moisture is the single most common reason it fails to establish in American gardens. Sow it and step back completely. Most American gardeners only ever grow the classic orange variety. Named selections now exist in cream, yellow, pink, burgundy, and deep red. Plant a mixture together. Let them cross-pollinate naturally over a few seasons, and the offspring begin producing color combinations that nobody sells in any seed packet anywhere. Over 4 or 5 years, your colony becomes genuinely unique to your specific piece of ground. A dense planting also functions as living mulch, suppressing weeds through sheer coverage density. For gardeners dealing with persistent bare patches where weeds dominate every spring, this plant solves that problem permanently while adding color. If this list is already giving you information you've never encountered before, subscribe right now. This is exactly what Evergreen Root Garden delivers every single week. Specific, practical, honest garden knowledge that saves you time, money, and a full season of frustration. Subscribe and it finds you automatically every week. Number 8. Yarrow. Yarrow tolerates drought, poor soil, full sun, partial shade, neglect, and compacted ground without a single complaint. It feeds bees, butterflies, beetles, and hoverflies simultaneously. It dries beautifully for indoor arrangements and holds its structure cleanly through winter. And it self-seeds reliably across nearly every temperate growing region in America. Yarrow spreads through both seed drop and underground rhizomes. Once established, it fills ground steadily and consistently. Give it room from the start or place it deliberately where you want permanent ground coverage. USDA Zones 3 through 9. One of the broadest hardiness ranges of any flowering perennial available to American gardeners. Zone 3 gardeners in Minnesota, North Dakota, and across the northern plain states. This plant is completely reliable for you. It doesn't flinch at your winters. Surface, sow in May. Seeds need light to germinate, so don't cover them. Press gently into raked soil and allow 14 to 21 days for germination. Thin to 12 inches apart once seedlings are established, and then leave it alone entirely. Excess fertility causes flopping. Rich, amended soil produces tall, weak stems that collapse before the season ends. Dry, lean ground produces upright, sturdy plants with far more flowers and far better structure. Don't add compost to the planting area. Yarrow has a documented history in American and European herbal medicine stretching back thousands of years. It was used to slow bleeding in battlefield wounds, which is why one of its oldest recorded names is soldier's woundwort. The leaves contain a compound called achillean with genuine mild astringent properties. The genus name Achillea comes directly from the legend that Achilles used this plant to treat his soldiers on the battlefield. That history is attached to something growing in your garden right now. Beyond the common white wildflower form, named varieties exist in pink, red, yellow, apricot, and soft lilac. The straight species self-seeds fairly true to color, but named variety offspring shift slightly, and that shift is almost always a welcome surprise rather than a problem. Number 7. Hollyhock. Hollyhock is the plant of old American farmhouses, sun-baked stone walls, and cottage gardens that have been running themselves for 30 years without a single deliberate replanting. There's a particular romance attached to it that almost no other garden plant in this country carries. And it's one of the easiest self-seeders you'll ever grow. Short-lived perennial to biennial depending on your conditions. But it self-seeds so reliably that in practice it behaves as a true long-term perennial. Some American gardeners report the same hollyhock colony occupying the same corner of their yard for 25 to 30 years without intervention. USDA zones 3 through 9. Genuinely tall, 5 to 8 feet is common. 10 feet is achievable in ideal conditions. Plant against walls, fences, or firmly at the back of your borders where that height works for you rather than against you. Sow directly in May, pressing seeds about a quarter-inch deep. Space about 18 to 24 inches apart after thinning. Hollyhocks develop long, deep taproots quickly. Attempt to transplant after the first 2 weeks, and you'll damage the root system severely and set the plant back an entire season. Direct sowing only from the very beginning. Hollyhocks are highly susceptible to hollyhock rust, a fungal disease that produces orange-brown pustules on the lower leaves and can completely defoliate the plant by midsummer in humid conditions. The most effective management is to treat them deliberately as biennials. Sow fresh seed into a slightly different position each season. This naturally breaks the disease cycle in the soil, and self-seeded offspring tend to drift away from heavily infected areas completely on their own. The flowers are edible, mild flavor, stunning as a garnish, particularly the deep burgundy and near black varieties. For American gardeners who grow both ornamentals and food, hollyhock bridges that gap in a way very few plants manage. Full sun, good drainage, and once established, it practically runs itself. Right now, think about your own garden. Are there spots where you've lost plants to deer, drought, or plain neglect season after season? Drop the answer in the comments below, because every plant still coming on this list was chosen specifically for those exact conditions. And what's coming at number 1 will completely change how you think about those problem areas permanently. Number 6. Purple top verbena. If you've ever walked through a well-designed American garden and noticed tall, wiry stems topped with tiny clusters of purple flowers, seemingly suspended in midair above everything else, that was almost certainly purple top verbena. Almost no leaf mass, just branching stems reaching 4 to 6 feet crowned with flower clusters that move in the faintest breeze. It doesn't block views or compete with neighboring plants. It layers through other plantings rather than dominating them. Garden designers across this country use it constantly for exactly that reason. In USDA zones 7 through 11, it behaves as a true perennial. In zones 5 and 6, it dies back in winter, but returns reliably from self-seeded offspring every spring without fail. Zone 4 gardeners test it in a sheltered microclimate. Many American growers in protected spots report consistent success with it. Surface, sow in May. Seeds need light to germinate. Press them barely into the soil surface. Germination can be slow, so allow up to 21 days and don't abandon them. They're coming. Without exaggeration, Verbena bonariensis is one of the 5 most significant butterfly plants an American gardener can grow. Its deep, narrow flower tubes are specifically accessible to long-tongued butterflies, swallowtails, painted ladies, and monarchs that cannot feed efficiently on shorter, broader flowers. It functions as a specialist feeding resource in late summer when most other flowers across American gardens have already finished blooming. For any gardener in the eastern or central United States trying to support monarch populations specifically, this plant is not optional. One caution for zone 9 and above. In very warm, moist conditions, it can spread aggressively. Remove a portion of flower heads before seeds drop if you need to manage the spread. Number 5. Foxglove. Foxglove is one of the most visually breathtaking plants in existence. Tall spires of tubular flowers in white, pink, purple, cream, and deep rose, spotted and freckled inside the throat. Genuinely spectacular in any American garden. And every part of it is toxic to humans, dogs, cats, and horses. Both of those things are equally true, and both matter before you put it in the ground. Biennial, but a relentless self-seeder. Establish it once, and it doesn't leave. Experienced American gardeners have grown foxglove in cottage gardens, woodland borders, and formal beds for generations. The key is knowing exactly what it is, handling it with gloves, and placing it thoughtfully away from areas where children and pets spend time. USDA zones 4 through 9. It prefers part shade, particularly in the hotter zones across the American South. Full afternoon sun will scorch and stress it. Rich, consistently moist, well-drained soil gives the best performance. Sow on the surface in May. The seeds are extremely fine. Mix them with dry sand before sowing to distribute them more evenly across your planting area. Don't cover them. Light is required for germination. Height at bloom runs 3 to 5 feet. Always plant toward the back or mid-border. Deer and rabbits instinctively avoid foxglove. The same chemistry that makes it toxic to mammals makes it one of the most reliable deer-resistant tall plants available to American gardeners dealing with constant wildlife pressure. In areas of the rural Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and Pacific Northwest, where deer damage is a persistent problem, foxglove holds its ground where other tall ornamentals get stripped bare. Foxglove is the original botanical source of digitalis, the heart medication that has been in clinical use for over 200 years and remains in modified pharmaceutical form on American pharmacy shelves today. The plant accumulates digitalis glycosides that directly affect cardiac muscle contraction. The same chemistry that makes it dangerous is the same chemistry that makes it medically significant. That's a plant with genuine history, genuine ecology, and genuine beauty growing in your garden from a single May sowing. Number 4, bee balm. Bee balm earns its name completely. The moment it blooms, bold, shaggy flower heads in red, pink, white, or lavender, it becomes a magnet. Bees arrive in numbers. Hummingbirds follow shortly after, which is less expected and genuinely exciting the first time you witness it happening in your own yard. A true perennial that spreads through both underground rhizomes and self-seeding. In good conditions, one plant becomes a vigorous colony within 3 to 4 seasons. Native to North America, which means if you garden anywhere within its range, this plant is deeply suited to your specific ecosystem in ways that non-native ornamentals simply cannot replicate. USDA zones 3 through 9, completely cold-hardy across the upper Midwest, New England, and the northern plain states. One of the most dependable native perennials for American gardens across every zone within that range. Surface, sow, in May. Seeds need light to germinate. Alternatively, divide established plants as spring. Divisions establish and flower significantly faster than seed-grown plants. Space about 18 to 24 inches apart and plant with the spreading habit in mind from the very beginning. Bee balm is highly susceptible to powdery mildew in humid climates. If you garden in the humid Southeast, the Gulf Coast states, or the Mid-Atlantic, choose mildew-resistant named varieties rather than the straight species. Jacob Klein, Raspberry Wine, and Marshall's Delight are all significantly more resistant and will perform far better across those regions. Bee balm is a member of the mint family, and the leaves carry a strong, complex fragrance, somewhere between oregano and flowers. The Oswego people, a nation of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, brewed the leaves as a medicinal and ceremonial tea, which is why bee balm is recorded across American botanical literature as Oswego tea. That indigenous history is attached to a plant you can establish in your backyard this May in zones 3 through 9 from a single surface sowing. If you've made it this far, and this information is genuinely changing how you think about your garden, subscribe right now. Every week, content exactly like this, specific, researched, honest, and built for real American gardeners, publishes and goes straight to your feed without you searching for it. Subscribe. Let it find you. Number 3, columbine. Columbine is the shapeshifter of the self-seeding world. Grow multiple varieties together and the offspring cross between parents, producing entirely new color combinations after 3 or 4 seasons. Your garden will have flowers that nobody is selling in any catalog anywhere in this country. The flowers themselves are genuinely complex. Nodding heads with long, backward projecting spurs, petals layered in contrasting colors. There's nothing in the American garden that looks quite like it. A true perennial across USDA zones 3 through 9. One of the few plants on this entire list that not only tolerates shade, but genuinely prefers it, under a canopy, along north-facing borders, between established hostas. That's where columbine comes completely alive. For shade gardeners in the Pacific Northwest, New England, and the Upper South, this is one of the strongest performers available to you. Sow on the surface in May. For significantly better germination, place seeds in a damp paper towel. Seal them in a Ziploc bag and refrigerate them for 3 to 4 weeks before sowing. This process, cold stratification, mimics winter dormancy and produces consistent, uniform sprouting within 2 to 3 weeks of planting. Without it, germination is slow and uneven. With it, the difference is substantial and visible. Columbine seeds are toxic if consumed in significant quantity. Worth knowing clearly if children spend time in your garden. Beyond that, columbine is a critical and specific host plant for the columbine dusky-wing butterfly. The caterpillars feed exclusively on Aquilegia foliage. No columbine dusky-wing. That specificity of relationship between one plant and one butterfly species represents exactly the kind of ecological function a genuine wildlife garden is built around. Height runs 18 to 36 inches, depending on variety. For shade gardeners specifically, this plant could sit at number 1 on its own merit. Number 2, Black-Eyed Susan. Black-Eyed Susan is the sunflower's wild, lower-maintenance cousin. Deep golden yellow petals surrounding a raised, dark, almost black central cone. It blooms for weeks on end, attracts nearly everything that flies, and when the flowers finally finish, those seed heads become a food source for birds straight through autumn and deep into winter. A true perennial native to North America, and among the most ecologically significant native wildflowers for supporting bees and butterflies across American gardens. Over 17 species of native bees are specifically documented as foraging on Rudbeckia. That's a verified ecological relationship, not a general pollinator claim. USDA zones 3 through 9. Completely reliable across the American Midwest, South, Northeast, and Pacific Northwest. Full sun, medium to dry soil, drought tolerant once established. Sow on the surface in May. Seeds need light. Press gently, but don't bury them. Germination runs 7 to 21 days in warm soil. Thin seedlings to 12 to 18 inches once established. Black-Eyed Susan is frequently misidentified at the garden center and confused with Gloriosa daisy, Mexican sunflower, and Helenium, sometimes even by mislabeled nursery stock. A reliable identification point. The leaves and stems are distinctly rough and almost sandpapery to the touch. That texture is dependable when labels are absent, unclear, or simply wrong, which happens far more often at American nurseries than most gardeners realize. Leave the seed heads standing through winter. Don't cut them back in October. In January, watching goldfinches work methodically through a stand of dried Black-Eyed Susan seed heads is one of the quieter, more satisfying things a garden ever gives you. That's your garden still actively feeding wildlife for months after the last bloom of summer. And now, number 1, purple coneflower. If I had to keep only one plant from everything on this list, just one, it would be this. Native to the North American prairies, hardy across USDA zones 3 through 9. Drought tolerant once established, deer resistant, long blooming. Often 8 to 10 continuous weeks of flowers from midsummer straight into fall. Medically significant, ecologically essential, and one of the most complete pollinator plants in the entire temperate world. The flowers are broad daisy-like, rose-pink to deep purple petals sweeping back from a raised, spiky, bronze-orange central cone. When a bumblebee lands on that cone and works it systematically, it looks like something out of a nature documentary. Except it's happening in your garden every single day for months. Sow on the surface of rake soil in May. Seeds need light, so don't cover them. For colder zones, cold stratification improves results substantially. Damp paper towel, Ziploc bag. For weeks in the refrigerator before sowing. In warm soil, without stratification, germination can take 21 to 30 days. Don't abandon them. Thin to 18 to 24 inches once established. In year 1, purple coneflower spends most of its energy building its root system. Modest growth above ground. In year 2, it flowers modestly. Year 3, multiple stems, dozens of flowers. Self-seeding begins into the surrounding area. By years 4 and 5, you don't have a plant anymore. You have a colony. And that colony feeds birds, bees, and butterflies from July straight through January without you touching it once. 3 facts about this plant that most American gardeners never find out. First, Over 30 species of native bees and more than 20 species of butterflies are documented foragers on purple coneflower. That's not a general claim. That's a verified ecological relationship of the first order. Second, the Echinacea genus has been studied extensively for its bioactive compounds. Root and flower extracts are among the most commercially distributed herbal supplements on American pharmacy shelves. The same plant growing in your garden for color is the one filling entire product sections at your local pharmacy. Third, the seed heads are the primary winter food source for goldfinches across enormous portions of North America. Cutting them down in autumn is one of the single most counterproductive things you can do in a wildlife-friendly garden. Leave them standing always. Purple coneflower is not just a plant. It's an investment that compounds. Year 1 is infrastructure. Year 5 is a self-sustaining ecosystem feeding wildlife from midsummer through the dead of winter, completely free from a single May planting. That's why it's number 1 on this list. Subscribe right now. Every week, content exactly like this finds every subscriber automatically. No searching, no missed windows, no expensive mistakes at the nursery because nobody gave you the right information at the right time. That's what subscribing to Evergreen Root Garden actually gives you. One tap. It costs nothing. Now a quick breakdown before you go. For dry, neglected ground where nothing else cooperates. Rose campion, California poppy, and yarrow. Give them the spots where everything else has failed. For shaded gardens and north-facing borders. Columbine, foxglove, and evening primrose. These plants don't just tolerate shade, they want it. For maximum wildlife support across bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, and birds. Purple coneflower, black-eyed Susan, bee balm, borage, and purple top verbena. Plant any 2 of these together and your garden begins functioning as a genuine ecosystem. For height and cottage garden depth at the back of the border. Hollyhock, foxglove, and evening primrose. 5 to 8 feet of structure and color with no staking, no babying, and no replanting required. Zone 3 and Zone 4 gardeners, purple coneflower, yarrow, black-eyed Susan, columbine, and bee balm are completely reliable for you. You have access to some of the strongest plants on this entire list. The single most common mistake American gardeners make with self-seeding plants is cleaning up too early. If you deadhead everything in October, rake your beds completely bare, and apply heavy mulch across the soil surface, you're removing seeds before they can germinate and covering the bare ground that seeds need to make contact with. Leave some seed heads standing. Leave patches of bare or lightly raked soil. These plants are biologically designed to do exactly this work on their own. Your only job is to get out of the way and let them do it. Tell me which of these 13 you're putting in the ground first this May. And if you're already growing any of these in your garden, which one has genuinely surprised you the most?